If you've been looking at plug-in solar, then you may have come away more confused than when you started. Do you need a battery? Can you charge an EV from plug-in solar? Do you need one of those expensive smart meters for the whole system to work? So I've been running a plug-in solar system now for more than 2 years, and I've answered thousands of your questions in the comments. So today I thought we'd dig into the top 5 questions that people ask and hopefully set your minds at rest. So let's start with electric vehicles, because having an EV is one of the quickest ways to reduce your energy costs. And I'm not talking about the energy that comes in from the grid, I'm talking about petrol and diesel. With overnight cheap tariffs, you can run an EV at 1 to 2 pence per mile. And the first thing you should do when you get an EV installed, if you can on your property, is get yourself a charge point installed, because this can charge your car overnight. You never have to worry about it. You just get up in the morning and your car is full. But if you've got plug-in solar, how does it work with something like this? Well, this particular model, this is a Jackery charger. This is designed to monitor the outgoing grid connection. And if any energy is flowing out to the grid, it grabs that energy and stores it in my car. But there's a problem. This requires a minimum of 1.3 kilowatts to be flowing out to the grid before it can use that energy to charge the car. So if we're limited to 800 watts by a microinverter, this is never going to start up. So another option is to use something like this. This is an EVSE, otherwise known as your granny charger. It has a standard 13 amp plug on one end and a Type 2 connector on the other. So you plug this into a plug socket in your house or an external plug socket and you charge your car. Now, these use about 2 kilowatts. So again, if you're only producing a maximum of 800, you're not going to be able to drive your granny charger, but you can supplement it. So this doesn't have a minimum startup because this will just go straight to 2 kilowatts. Unless you've got one of a number of brands like this one that actually let you configure it. So I can here and I can turn the amount of power it uses down. I can go all the way down to 6 amps. Now there is a downside to that. 6 amps is still more than an 800 watt inverter will produce, but it does mean that I can use most of what I'm exporting and just import a little bit from the grid. The downside is they get less efficient at charging your car as you reduce that current. So when you get down to about 6 amps, you're adding maybe 1 to 2 miles of range per hour of the day. If we assume you're going to get 8 hours of sunlight, you're probably only going to add maybe 6 to 8 miles of range to your car using something like this. So if you're thinking about getting a microinverter to charge your EV, I'd maybe move yourself onto a tariff that lets you charge it at a cheap rate overnight and forget about this as part of the plan. To battery or not to battery? That is the question. So one of the questions that comes up all of the time is, do I need to buy a battery? And it's almost an impossible question to answer because I don't know your personal situation. But let me give you a couple of things to think about that might help you make the decision whether or not you need a battery. The main thing a battery gives you is the ability to time shift whatever energy these panels generate to the time when you want to use it. So if you saw my video the other day about building a 250 pound system where we put one of these panels with a microinverter, they only generate power, obviously when there is sunshine. It's June and as you can see it's not exactly sunny, but these are still generating power and that power is flowing directly into the house. But if we're not using that power, if nobody is home, that power is going to flow straight out to the grid and you're not going to get paid for it. So that's the advantage of a battery, is that if nobody is using that energy, it will get stored in the battery. Then later on in the day when everyone's home, you can take the power from the battery and feed it into your house and save you buying energy later in the day. Now, there are downsides to this, obviously, is you will get some losses from conversion, but think of it as It's only a loss of something that you never had in the first place. So you might lose 10% by taking the DC from the panel and storing it in the battery, taking it out the battery and putting it into the house. So you might get 10% less energy than if you just use the microinverter to do it one time. But you can use that energy when you need to use it. When the family is home, when the kids are on their gaming PCs, when you're watching TV in the evening, and instead of drawing energy from the grid, you can feed it in from the battery. So the question really isn't, do I need a battery? It's, does a battery fit in with your lifestyle? So what happens when the grid goes down? You get a power cut, your microinverter, you might be thinking, that's great, I've got some solar panels in the garden, I've got the microinverter, that'll keep me going. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. All microinverters sold in the UK have to have something called anti-islanding technology. That means the minute the grid goes down, they switch off. So it doesn't matter how sunny it is, even on a day like today when there's not a great deal of sun, these are still generating power. But the microinverter will stop converting that energy and sending it into your house. And until the grid comes back, you won't be able to use it. Now, if you have a system with a battery installed, the battery might have something called EPS, Emergency Power Supply. That is a 13 amp plug socket that is on the battery itself, a bit like the ones on my Stream system, which I'll pop an image up on the screen so you can actually see that. Those still allow you to draw power from the batteries to feed an appliance when the grid is down. But it can't feed the energy back into the house for everything to use. So it's a great solution to keep a fridge, a freezer, the Wi-Fi, things that you need to keep running during a power cut, but you're not going to be able to feed it back into the house. Now, I'm going to head back inside because it's June and it's starting to rain. Okay, what about smart meters? A lot of people ask, do I need the optional smart meter to make a system work? Now, I'm not talking about the smart meter that sits on the outside of your house that's supplied by your electricity provider and your DNO. I'm talking about ones that live in your consumer unit. So let's head into the downstairs toilet. There's a phrase you don't hear very often. And if I actually look at my consumer unit here, you can see on the left-hand side, I have something called a Shelly monitor. Now, what that Shelly monitor does is monitors using something called a CT clamp. These are little magnetic induction loops that go around the cables to sense whether there is power flowing and in which direction the power is flowing. Is it going to the grid or from the grid? And then they can report that back into the app. Well, the advantage of something like this is if you have a battery solution, is it can control the discharge rate of your batteries. So if it is you're using a lot of energy, this can detect that there is more energy being pulled in from the grid. It can send a signal to the battery, and the battery can ramp up to its 800 watt limit to supply the house. Now, this particular Shelly one here, there is an EcoFlow branded version of this. They are exactly the same thing. They're both made by Shelly. EcoFlow just rebrand them. But I think there is a better solution for most people because this requires it to be fitted and checked by a qualified electrician. So as a general rule of thumb, anything that happens inside one of these boxes needs a qualified electrician. Even if you're competent, I trained when I was a youngster as an electrical engineer, I still have a qualified electrician come in and do all the work in my consumer units. And that adds cost. But what if there's a simpler way to control your battery? For that, we're going to head back out into the studio and I'm going to show you how you can use a smart plug to adapt the output of your battery depending on what's happening in your house. So we've come back inside because I want to show you how something as simple as a smart plug can really help if you have a battery solution like the one under my desk here. Now, in the previous example, I talked about having something in your consumer unit that monitored the outgoing grid connection and could tell the battery to ramp up or ramp down depending on the usage of your house. So if you were exporting energy, it would tell the batteries to charge. If you were importing energy, it would tell the batteries to discharge to try and meet the incoming demand. Well, that's great, but as I say, there are costs involved of having an electrician come in and do that work for you. So this is an EcoFlow Shelly smart plug, and all you have to do is go into the app. If I scroll down here, you'll see I've actually got it already connected. It is just a simple Bluetooth connection. Set it up, get it onto your Wi-Fi like every other device. And I'm going to use this fan to simulate a load that could be anything in your house. So you can imagine if you've got kids using gaming PCs during the evening, put one of these smart plugs on the end. Not only can you switch it off when you want to, but more importantly, you can have the batteries supply the energy that is going to be pulled from that smart plug. So right now you can see there is 86 watts coming in from solar. It's pouring with rain, it's June, what can we expect? But the house is drawing 0 watts right now. I'm going to turn the fan on, and almost instantly you can see 40, 50 watts to power this fan is now being fed from the batteries into the house. And that means that we can control the loads. So again, I can supply all of the power that this fan is going to use from my batteries. If I turn it off, immediately the power drops to 0. And that's where a smart plug can really help. If you've got 2 or 3 loads that you want to not draw power from the grid, but you want to supply from your batteries that are pretty consistent, every time you turn that device on, you'd rather supply the power from the batteries, then a smart plug might be the way to go rather than a smart meter in your consumer unit. Okay, one question that comes up all the time is, can I add more than 2 panels to my microinverter? And the answer is, it depends. Now, the reason I say that is it depends on the panels that you're adding. Now, these are designed obviously to make it really simple. Put one panel on one input, one panel on the other input, and you're done. You could easily put 2 500 watt panels on this device, no problem whatsoever. But a lot of people have been saying, well, if I put my panels in vertical orientation like you've got on your fences, can I over panel? Can I put more than 2 panels per MPPT? And will that potentially damage the device? Well, the way you can work this out, if you know how to do the calculations, then I don't know why you're watching this video. If you don't, go get the data sheet for your microinverter. Go get either a photograph of the sticker that is on the back of the panels, which will have all the voltage and current information on that sticker, and give them to ChatGPT, Claude, whatever your favorite AI platform is. And then ask it, can it calculate both panels in series per MPPT? That means one or more than one panel connected to a single MPPT, or multiple panels in parallel connected to a single MPPT. And it will then take all of that voltage information, it will work out exactly what it will be supplying to the MPPT, and it will tell you whether you're in danger of blowing it. My recommendation is, with modern panels, stick with one. You're not going to be in any danger if you put a 500 watt panel on each of those MPPTs. You should be good to go. That's it for today's video. I hope you found these 5 things useful. As I say, these are the questions that come up in the comments time and time again, so I thought I'd take the opportunity today and answer them for you. If this has been useful, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And if I'm lucky, I'll see you back here real soon for another video. Hopefully when the weather's a little bit better.